hear it before dawn, not the crowing of a rooster, not the shuffle of animals stirring in their pens, not the creak of a wooden door or the scrape of a millstone being dragged into place. You hear a voice. A man stands in his doorway as the first gray light touches the hills above Galilee. His eyes are open. His hands are raised. And he is speaking, not to his wife, not to his children, not to himself. He is reciting words that his father recited, and his father's father, stretching back through generations whose names he no longer knows. This is prayer, but it is not what you imagine. There is no bowed head, no folded hands, no silence. Prayer in the time of Jesus was not a whisper in the dark or a thought held privately in the heart. It was audible. It was physical. It was woven into the rhythm of every single day, as regular as sunrise, as necessary as bread. When Hannah prayed in the temple centuries before, her lips moved, but no sound came out. The priest Eli saw her and assumed she was drunk. Why? Because silent prayer was strange. It was unexpected. It looked wrong. Prayer was meant to be heard, and it was everywhere, in doorways at dawn, in fields at midday, in crowded courtyards and quiet rooms. It marked time. It structured labor. It bound a scattered people into a single voice lifted toward Jerusalem, toward the God they believed heard every word. If you want to understand the world Jesus lived in, you must understand this. Prayer was not an escape from ordinary life. It was the pulse beneath it. Prayer was not private. Stand in a village in Galilee on an ordinary morning. The sun has cleared the eastern hills. A farmer finishes tying his sandals and steps outside. He does not move toward his field, not yet. He turns his body east, toward Jerusalem, toward the temple he has seen perhaps twice in his life, and he begins to speak. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. His voice carries across the dirt courtyard. His neighbor hears it from the next house. His son hears it from the threshold. This is the Shama, the central declaration of Jewish faith, and it is recited aloud twice every day, at dawn and at dusk, just as the Torah commands, when you lie down and when you rise. This is not a personal moment, it is a public act. The farmer's wife inside pauses as she kneads dough. She too recites the words, her lips moving as her hands work. The children repeat the phrases they have heard since they could speak. This prayer is the first conscious thought of the morning and the last before sleep. It is a pledge, a declaration, a reminder of identity spoken into the air so that ears, human and divine, can hear it. Prayer had a body. The farmer does not close his eyes. He does not sit. He stands, feet planted, facing the direction of the temple. Later in the day, when the sun reaches its highest point, he will stop his work again. He will stand once more and recite a series of blessings, the Amida, the standing prayer. His lips will move, his hands may rise, palms open, in the ancient gesture of appeal. If he is in the synagogue on the Sabbath, he will bow. If he is in the temple, should he ever make that long pilgrimage, he may prostrate himself fully, forehead to stone. These are not gestures of decoration. They are the language of the body in prayer. Standing shows respect, the posture of a servant before a master. Bowing signals reverence. Raised hands are an opening, an offering of empty palms to be filled. This is how prayer looked, and it shaped the day. A craftsman in his workshop hears the distant sound of a ram's horn from the synagogue, or he simply knows by the angle of the light that the hour has come. He sets down his tools, he turns east, he prays. Then he returns to his work. This was not an interruption of life, it was the structure of it. The day was not divided into sacred time and ordinary time. It was all one fabric and prayer, and was the thread that held it together. The day had a rhythm, and prayer set the beat. Before the farmer lifted his hoe, he lifted his voice. Before the woman lit her cooking fire, she recited words older than the stones of her village. Before the fisherman pushed his boat into the dark water of the lake, he turned toward Jerusalem and spoke the Shama into the cold morning air. Twice daily, every day, without exception. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. These words were the boundary markers of daylight. They framed everything between them, the labor, the meals, the movement from task to task. A person woke inside this structure. A person slept inside it. But the Shema was not the only prayer. 3 times each day, the Amida was recited. Morning, afternoon, evening. These were the hours when, in Jerusalem, the priests offered sacrifices in the temple, a lamb in the morning, a lamb in the afternoon, incense rising with the prayers of the people. You did not need to be in Jerusalem to participate. A man mending a plow in Capernaum would stop mid-afternoon. A woman grinding grain in Nazareth would pause, wipe her hands, and stand. A shepherd on a hillside would turn from his flock, face the distant city, and recite the blessings, praising God, asking for wisdom, for healing, for peace. They prayed when the priests prayed. They aligned their breath with the rhythm of the temple, though they stood 100 miles away. This was the clock of faith, not marked by sundials or water drips, but by the pull of prayer at fixed hours. The body learned it, the day bent around it, and it was not rushed. The Amida was a series of benedictions, blessings that moved through themes like steps in a dance, praise for God's greatness, petitions for the community's needs, thanks for divine faithfulness. Each blessing ended, and the one praying would pause, bow slightly, then continue. Perhaps the farmer's child played in the dirt nearby, watching. Perhaps the woman's hands stilled on the grinding stone, waiting. Prayer created a pocket of time within time, a moment when the urgency of survival paused, and the voice turned toward something it could not see or touch, but trusted was listening. This rhythm was shared. Across Galilee, across Judea, across every scattered community where Jews lived under foreign rule, the same prayers rose at the same hours. A weaver in Alexandria, a merchant in Rome, a widow in Jerusalem, all standing, all facing the same direction, all speaking words their ancestors had spoken. It was a thread stretched across distance, pulling a scattered people into a single motion. The temple was not like the synagogue. It was not like the home. It was not a place you visited weekly or casually passed on your way to the market. For most Jews living in Galilee or the villages of Judea, the temple in Jerusalem was the center of the universe, and they might see it only a handful of times in their entire lives. But when they did, they prayed surrounded by thousands. Imagine the approach during Passover. You have walked for days, your feet blistered, your back sore from the road. You crest the final hill, and there it is. White limestone blazing in the sun, gold gleaming from the sanctuary roof, smoke from the altar rising into a sky crowded with the smoke of 100,000 pilgrims' fires. The sound reaches you before you reach the gates, a low roar like the sea, tens of thousands of voices layered over each other, blessings, chants, the bleating of lambs being led to slaughter, the shouts of vendors selling doves for the poor who cannot afford a sheep. You step into the outer court, the court of the Gentiles. It is packed, bodies press against bodies. The air smells of sweat, of incense, of roasting meat and burning fat. Somewhere ahead, beyond walls you cannot pass, the priests are chanting in Hebrew. You cannot see them, you can barely hear them. But you know they are there, standing before the altar in the court of the priests, offering the sacrifices that will atone for the sins of the nation, and you are part of it. You stand in that massive, jostling crowd, and you pray. Not silently, not alone. Your voice joins the voices around you. A man from Jericho to your left, a family from Tyre behind you, an old woman from Egypt pressing forward with a dove clutched in her hands. You recite psalms you have known since childhood. You bow when the priest's blessing echoes from the inner courts. You say, Amen, with such force that it feels like the word could crack stone. This is not the quiet reflection of a private room. This is prayer as spectacle, as pilgrimage, as the physical gathering of a people before the God they believe dwells in the innermost chamber of this building. For the villager who has spent his year plowing rocky soil and mending tools, this moment is overwhelming. He is standing at the axis of creation, the place where heaven meets earth, and his prayer, his small, worn voice, is caught up in something far larger than himself. The synagogue was different. It was not the dwelling place of God. There was no altar, no sacrifice, no priests in linen robes moving through clouds of incense. The synagogue was a room, sometimes stone, sometimes mud brick, where the community gathered on the Sabbath to pray and to hear the Torah read aloud. This was the spiritual living room of the village. A farmer who had prayed alone in his doorway all week now prayed shoulder to shoulder with his neighbors. The man who sold him barley stood to his right. The woman who delivered his wife's child stood behind him. The boy who helped with the harvest sat cross-legged on the floor, watching. Someone from the community, perhaps a teacher, perhaps simply a man known to read well, would be invited to stand and unroll one of the scrolls. He would read a portion from the law or the prophets. His voice would fill the room, and when he finished, the congregation would respond, Amen. Not whispered, declared. A word that meant truly, or so be it. A way of taking the words just spoken and making them your own. The amen of 100 voices was not polite agreement. It was participation. It was the people claiming the prayer as theirs. This is where children learned faith, not through lectures, but through repetition, through watching their fathers stand when the Torah was brought out, through hearing their mothers' voices rise in the same psalms week after week, through the rhythm of the liturgy sinking into their bones before they were old enough to understand what the words meant. But the synagogue was not the only place faith was practiced. The home was its foundation. In the hour before the Sabbath began, the mother of the household would light the lamps. She would speak a blessing over them, words that marked the transition from ordinary time to sacred time. The family would gather. The father would lift a cup of wine and bless it. He would break bread and give thanks for it. The children would watch and learn that every meal, every moment, was woven through with the presence of God. The Shama was recited here, too, at dawn and at dusk. Parents taught it to their children by speaking it aloud every day until the words were as familiar as their own names. Small scrolls containing the Shama, called mezuzot, were affixed to the doorposts, a physical reminder that this threshold was a sacred boundary. Faith was not left at the synagogue door. It was carried into the kitchen, the courtyard, the workbench. It was in the blessing spoken over bread still warm from the oven. It was in the prayer whispered over a sick child. It was in the words a father spoke as he sent his son into the fields. Go with God. This was not religion as a separate category of life. This was life itself, structured and sanctified by prayer. Prayer had words you did not invent. The farmer, standing in his doorway at dawn, did not search for something original to say. The woman lighting the Sabbath lamps did not compose a new blessing each week. The fisherman turning toward Jerusalem from his boat did not improvise. They recited. They spoke words given to them, words their parents had taught them, words copied onto scrolls in the synagogue, words that had been prayed for generations. The Psalms were their hymnal and their prayer book, covering every human condition. Rage, joy, despair, gratitude, fear, trust. When you did not know what to say, the Psalms said it for you. The Shema was recited exactly as written. The benedictions of the Amida followed a pattern, praise, petition, thanks, that shaped each prayer into a familiar form. Even the Lord's Prayer, which Jesus would teach his disciples, fit this structure. Brief, rhythmic, built on the cadence of benedictions already spoken in every synagogue. Originality was not the goal, continuity was. When you prayed the words your ancestors prayed, you joined your voice to theirs. You became part of a chorus stretching back through time. The shepherd on the hillside spoke the same phrases as the priest in the temple, as the widow in her courtyard, as the elder who could no longer walk, but still turned east 3 times a day. And when a prayer ended, the people answered, Amen. This was not passive listening. The word was a declaration, shouted by crowds in the temple courts, spoken firmly by families at the Sabbath table. It meant, let it be so, or this is true. It was how the community took ownership of what had been prayed. One voice led, many voices affirmed. But prayer was not only words, it was posture, it was direction. It was the body making visible what the mouth declared. The Amida was prayed standing, feet together, body still, facing Jerusalem. This was the posture of a servant before a king. Respect rendered physical. You did not lounge, you did not sit. You stood and you spoke. Bowing came at specific moments, a slight bend at the waist, acknowledging the holiness of the one addressed. In the temple, full prostration was common. Knees, hands, forehead to stone. Submission made tangible. Hands were raised, palms open and lifted. An ancient gesture of appeal. Empty hands reaching upward, ready to receive, or perhaps hands spread wide, as if to embrace what could not be held. And always the body turned east, toward Jerusalem, toward the temple, toward the place where God's presence was, believed to dwell most fully. A man in Galilee praying at noon turned east. A woman in Babylon did the same. Geography dissolved in that shared orientation. This was how prayer looked from the outside, a marketplace where a few merchants pause mid-transaction, turn from their stalls, and stand motionless for a moment, lips moving, hands raised slightly. A vineyard where a laborer straightens, wipes his brow, and faces a direction that has nothing to do with the rows of vines before him. Prayer was embodied. It involved the whole person: voice, hands, feet, face. It was not an escape from the physical world, but an act performed within it, using the only tools a human has: breath, muscle, bone. This rhythm held a people together. Same words, same hours, same direction. A merchant in Jerusalem reciting the Shama at dawn. A farmer in Galilee doing the same. A widow in Alexandria. A scribe in Babylon. Scattered across the Roman world, separated by hundreds of miles, speaking different languages in their daily lives, but in prayer, unified. This kibai was not accidental. Under Roman occupation, prayer became resistance. Not the resistance of swords or rebellion, but something deeper. It was the refusal to forget who you were. 3 times daily, you stopped. You turned toward a city you might never see again. You recited words in a language some no longer fully understood. And in doing so, you declared, "We are still here. We are still God's people. The empire controls our land, our bodies, our labor, but not this." Prayer was the thread that stitched identity across distance and time. It gave structure when everything else was unstable. Crops failed, children died, taxes crushed, Rome ruled. But the hours of prayer remained fixed. The words did not change, and so neither did the people who spoke them. This is the world Jesus knew. When he taught about prayer, about going into your room, shutting the door, praying in secret, he was not rejecting this communal rhythm. He was speaking within it, adding an interior dimension to a faith already deeply embodied and public. His words assumed you already knew how to pray. Now, he said, learn to mean it. The sun is high now. The farmer is in his field, hoe in hand, sweat on his brow. The rhythm of labor has resumed. But the day is not the same as it was before dawn. It has been marked, structured, framed by words spoken into the air, words that connected him to his father, to his village, to Jerusalem, to every Jew standing at this same hour, facing the same direction. Prayer was not an escape from ordinary life. It was the pulse beneath it, the heartbeat that reminded a scattered people under foreign rule, laboring in dust and heat. You are not alone. You are part of something larger, and God is listening.